Welcome back to another episode of the 2023 Overwatch League off-season news recap. It's been a while, and I'm sorry about that, and sorry for this late coverage. I was on vacation, but we're back and ready to grind. Quite a few announcements have happened over the last week. There's a lot to discuss, so let's not waste any time. First up is going to be the most recent news from yesterday. The NYXL made their roster for the 2023 season public mere days before the start of the Pro-Am. New York is going to consist of Kellen at tank, Fitz, Shockwave, and Psycho at DPS, and Lep, Creative, Anyun, and Halo at support. Generally, not a roster that blows you away. On paper, they don't have a very high ceiling, and it's a weird-looking mixed roster that doesn't inspire confidence, but at the very least, there is a lot of familiar faces that we're happy to see back. I, for one, am really pumped that both Fitz and Creative are not out of the league. They've been staples in this league for years, they're reliable, and yet nobody wanted them except the NYXL, who honestly went through a lot of drama and criticism this offseason. But hey, they're still here, which is great, and they'll likely be the team's best players, or I think there's a good chance, so we can't complain too much. Creative has shown that he can be good in multiple systems, so his flexibility will definitely come in handy. And Fitz, while having a lot of competition in front of him, is a proven veteran who can play the game at the highest level possible. It'll be very interesting though to see how he does as the main DPS of a team. With no Prophet there to back him up, there's a lot more pressure on him to be the main guy. And with this easily being the worst team he's ever been a part of, one can't help but wonder how much worse he's going to look and if he really can carry. Aside from that, I'm pretty pumped that Shockwave is back in the league as well. His situation on Vancouver last year was kind of crappy despite being a damn good player, and he's never gotten that true second shot at OWL. His rookie year was basically the only time he got consistent play. He deserves this chance for sure, especially with how crazy he's been in contenders recently. Shockwave put in some serious work, and he's a beast of a player still. Don't be surprised if he is also one of the best players on this team. Speaking of old Vancouver DPS, it's pretty interesting to see Psycho back here again. His first stint in the league was rather short and not the best. He didn't play all that well, nor was the team around him any good at the time. This is a chance for him to start anew though. People rave about this man all the time as a skilled flex DPS with a very good track record in Tier 2. But that is of course with some good help around him. New York are nowhere close to a top team, at least on paper. How he does as a true underdog is a bit more up in the air. With the right team around him, I think he could be good. He probably deserves a real second chance here, but it will obviously take some convincing on his end to prove himself. If the NYXL want to have any sort of chance, him and the other DPS definitely need to step up their game. Now let's consider Kellen. Not gonna lie, a little surprising to see him back here. It's not that it's a bad thing, it's more that it's shocking that any player from last year's roster is back here. But hey, good for him, man. Kellen struggled as a solo tank with no real help, and his gameplay had some weird mistakes at times. But he's really not that bad of a player like some people seem to think. Statistically, he more than held his own. I think it's more that Kellen just didn't have the right system around him. He has a lot of potential to be a good tank in this league. Some people are quick to forget that he was one of the most hyped up rookies just 1 year ago. There's a lot of room for him to grow and be something special. But without any real help, I don't know how much more of his impact we actually feel. It feels kind of like a carbon copy of last year, if I'm being honest with you. His team isn't super talented, and his backline doesn't really inspire much confidence, and the team generally may not synergize that well, and they might not give him the help he deserves with engagements and all that stuff, so I don't know how to feel about this. He might not be in that good of a spot. Bare minimum though, it's good he's getting another chance, I just wish it was for a different team. As for why the support line itself doesn't feel that great, it's the same thing as DPS. Creative, while good, is not going to have people like Lastro or Vindame backing him up. Him and Fitz may not be able to shine like on their Seoul days because of their current situations. Now for Lep, in all likelihood, he's going to be the main support of this team, or the starter I should say, and that's a notable step down compared to what Creative's used to. Lep was okay on Houston last year, but you do have to remember that the sample size is small as he only played for one stage. In all likelihood, his ceiling probably isn't that high, and without that reliability, Creative may struggle to stay alive and give his teammates that support that usually helps make his teams elite when he plays for them. Lep needs to step up, and the communication has to be good between them, or the NYXL likely fall apart against any decent opponent. Oh, and if you're wondering about their other support players, it's a bit harder to get a grasp on what their role's gonna be. For those who don't know, the NYXL largely wanted to have a marginalized gender roster during this offseason, even if it meant they'd pull players who probably didn't belong in the league. They eventually scrapped the idea, but clearly wanted to have that kind of representation to a certain extent, which is why Halo and Anion are here. Now, Halo you may recognize as the former main support of the Boston Uprising in Season 3. She has since then come out as transgender and has made a pushback to OWL, and her hard work has finally paid off. She brings some good experience to the table, but likely will be the backup to Lep, you'd have to assume, who just feels like the better option currently. Meanwhile, Anion is a flex support player from the North American Contenders team, Wisp. They finished 3rd place in the recent US World Cup Open Trials, so not too shabby. They're likely going to be a backup, but you never know what could happen in the result of a double flex support composition. I'm not exactly sure if either of these two will have any sort of role on this team. Lep Creative just gives the team the best possible odds of winning, at least on paper. We can remain hopeful they get to play, but how much is largely up for debate. The NYXL feel very weird. It's like they combined 3 different ideas into one and just threw it at the wall. Their floor is already well established. It will not be surprising in the slightest to see them be one of the worst teams in North America. However, if they were to piece some of these things together, maybe a few upsets come their way. Like I said, they do have some decent talent, but it feels like there may be a divide, at least on paper. My final thoughts for now are there's a few things to like, but more things to dislike. That takes care of New York. Now I want to dive into the second roster reveal of the day, and that will be the new look Seoul Dynasty. Their 2023 roster is Void, Lee Soo-min, Krillin, Prophet, and Prophet. Yeah, you heard me right. They have 2 Prophets on their team now. Casters, I wish you a lot of luck with your impending confusion. Anyway, the first thought that comes to mind is this really isn't as bad as a lot of people thought it would be, including myself. I fully expected the Dynasty to be noticeably worse than what they got. But given the circumstances in APAC and some of the acquisitions they made, they are still in a position to be one of the top teams over there. I don't know if they're going to hold up globally, but from a local standpoint, there's a lot to like. Prophet was already announced to be coming back, and we know what he brings because he's Prophet. So let's focus on the new guys. And I mean, obviously, the real standout pickup here is Void, because for the longest time, his heart was set on retiring and doing his mandatory military service. And yet, out of nowhere, his drive to compete comes back strong. And I could not think of a more suitable place to go than Seoul next to his old rival Prophet. Amazing pickup by the Dynasty here. Prime form or not, no matter what version of him we get, Void is one of the best players ever. Some argue the best off-tank in league history. With that kind of resume next to Prophet, you gotta love it if you're a Dynasty fan. He may not be the super flex that Smurf was, but you already know that Void is gonna be reliable on a pretty consistent basis. This guy is one of the best tank players in the world, and it's safe to say that he will be insane with Prophet when it comes to like a dive comp or maybe like the Sigma Hanzo stuff. Void is one of the best possible replacements for Smurf that you could ever ask for. Love, love, love this pickup. As for Prophet's new DPS partner, well, it's a little weird. The spelling is different, but having 2 guys named Prophet on the same team should not be allowed. It is really, really weird. Things are probably going to get confusing a lot on broadcast. As for the pickup itself, I'm liking it. Prophet gives me those Ants vibes, you know? Not so much that he's an unknown player because the man literally played on the best Contenders team in the world, it's more the skill set. Mechanically, Prophet is off the roof, as he's a big-time sharpshooter, and his signature character is the Widowmaker. His aim is absolutely cracked, and he's only 17 years old. The man has only been competing professionally since May 2022. Not even a full year has gone by, and he's already OWL ready. He's the real deal when it comes to talent and potential and the skill set. Obviously, there's a lot for him to learn as a young player, but the foundation is clearly there. And with Seoul's coaching there to guide him, he could do some real damage in the league. It's not much, but based off of some of the stuff I've seen in the league scrims that have come out, with him versus the Spark, he was getting the best of Shy at certain points, which is a major statement considering that kind of caliber of player he is, you know? I wouldn't expect Prophet to be the reliable duo that Fitz was in the past, let's say, especially at the start of his career, but the pure mechanics and the fast growth he's shown is very promising, and it's a really nice find by Seoul here. And there's more nice things to say with their rookie flex support, Lee So-min. He was a consistent contributor for the second best Korean contenders team, Sin Persa Gaming. This 17-year-old prospect started putting his name on the map in the summer, and he's never looked back. He's a really strong player mechanically, and probably the most hyped up support in this rookie class. He showed off a great Kiriko recently, and he likes to play very aggressively. I mean, he'll always take the crazy angles and play up close and personal. He's not so much a heal-centric flex support. He reminds me almost of Shu. He's going to be a very important playmaker for Seoul this year. He gives them an extra dimension for getting big picks, and you should possibly expect Seoul to invest in him a decent bit. Seoul are going to go all in on this style of strong individual playmaking with good veteran synergy. The flex support position, Void, and both Prophets are all sick individually. Let's just pray that this kind of playstyle doesn't end up getting punished too much, because if they do get away with it, Seoul should be very well rounded with a lot of pieces that can take over a game. This is another really good signing by the Dynasty, especially with a support master like Toby there to progress him. Honestly, the only pickup that feels weird is Krillin. Swapping him to main support when he already wasn't that great last year feels a little weird. He'll be the latest installment in the flex support era of having them swap over to a main support, and this experiment so far has seen some mixed results, but main support could end up suiting his style. Krillin has shown he can play in a couple of different styles and in different systems, and he already does have experience on Brig, I suppose. I don't love Krillin on this team by any means, it doesn't feel that right to me, but you know, he really wasn't that bad on Washington at all. In a double flex support composition, he could be pretty decent for them. And honestly, if Krillin on the least impactful role in the game is your clear-cut weakness, you're in pretty decent shape. Krillin isn't the best pickup by any means, but we've seen a lot worse this offseason. Oh, and fun fact, Krillin and Prophet are reuniting as teammates. These two were part of the London Spitfire all the way back in Season 2, so that's a cool tidbit for some of the new school fans out there. Not the reunion you'd expect, nor the one that you really needed, but it's a thing. And that, as of right now, is the Dynasty's 5-man roster. Without really knowing anything, I like it. It's no 2022 squad, but still one that lets you be competitive. It may not be a stretch to see them be a top 3 or better team in APAC. It's realistic with the kind of talent they've established. For APAC standards, they should be pretty good. I don't expect them to be title contenders this year, but it's a likable group, and I look forward to watching them play. The last bit of big roster reveal stuff I wanted to share with you isn't actually official yet, but it will be by tomorrow probably. The LA Valiant's roster in all likelihood is going to be Crawley at tank, Seeker, Nose at DPS, then CJ, Liar, and Paintbrush at support. While no formal announcement has been made by the team, all of these players have made their own MS Paint Valiant headers and have made it public in their Twitter bios. I won't go too deep since it's not official yet, nor is the team all that exciting, but I'll try my best. On paper, not a roster you're all that excited about. Lots of contenders talent out there, and guys that don't exactly elevate you to a high level at the OWL standard. It's cool that they have some OWL veterans here though, for sure. I think Seeker, Paintbrush, and Croy have all gotten a decent taste before, so at least they're gonna not be going in totally green, so to speak. In particular, I do love that they got Seeker. He showed a lot of promise on Boston last year in a short amount of time, and I think he deserved another chance. He's a good hitscan player that can hang in there with the best. But the rest of the team, I'm not exactly sure. Croy, I mean, the amount of time we saw him wasn't much, but he did struggle for the Eternal last year as the solo tank. Definitely not all his fault, and he could be better in a new system for sure, but that's just how it went, we're stating the obvious. And with Paintbrush, I mean, while he did play an OWL, he's been out of this league for years. He was okay with Dallas back in the day, but just okay at best, you know, average. He's a good veteran to have, but there's only so much he can do, especially as a main support. The rest of their guys, though, they're all collegiate players from what I can tell, with some decent contenders results, but no real experience at this level. I'm liking that Liars from Redbird, though, because that team has consistently been a top dog in North America. And I also like that they picked up 2 flex supports for maximum coverage there. But it's not anything that makes you think they'll be better than, like, bottom 3 NA. A lot of their players are good, but they don't have the star power or experience. They have 1 tank and no other backups in sight. This is the Valiant scrounging up a minimal roster at the very last second, not making any sort of real announcement, and calling it a day because they do not care. North American Contenders has talent, but when that's all you have against some of these ridiculous teams, then it's time to expect the worst. It is very, very scuffed that the Valiant have yet to make any announcement on this, and it's concerning and very sad that the players have to do it for them. It makes you wonder what on earth is going on over there. I feel bad for the guys repping their uniforms this year. It's gonna suck for all of them. I'm glad they're getting paid, but man, it is not gonna be fun. Moving away from the full roster stuff, we have the Houston Outlaws coming in and completing their roster in pretty surprising fashion. We all definitely had worries about the idea of Fearless being the solo tank, and the Outlaws addressed that concern fully with a very familiar face to us all. After a year off, we can finally welcome back Gargoyle to the league. Things can change after a year off, but Gargoyle was always a consistent tank player on the Florida Mayhem. Basically from the end of 2019 until the end of 2021, Gargoyle showed us consistency across all off-tank characters. He gives the Outlaws the exact thing they were lacking. He's a talented player who fills in the holes left behind by Fearless. He can play at an all-star level while helping the Outlaws be flexible. Deepness at tank was like the one big concern about this team's hopes to go far in a playoff run, so if Gargoyle can be what he used to be, then it's worth feeling rather confident in the Outlaws to go far in 2023. They got their one missing piece. Fearless and Gargoyle will complement each other very nicely. They provide maximum flexibility at the tank position, they offer various playstyles, and they have strong playmaking abilities. I'm loving this Gargoyle pickup, man. It's great that he's back in the league, and it's great that he's joining a talented team like the Outlaws, no less. It's good to have this guy back. He deserves to be here. Let's just hope that him and the Outlaws do some great things. Now, one other quick small addition to discuss comes from the Shanghai Dragons. They announced that Bebe will officially be their 6th man as a player coach. In other words, he'll be what Jake was to the Outlaws in 2021. Now, there is a world where he doesn't play any times at all. This could be just Shanghai's way to get their 6th player as easily as possible. But at the same time, they could probably use as much help as they can get. Maybe if Bebe gets some reps in at main support, or maybe you just want to see him in there for double flex support purposes. Regardless, he's familiar with the system and a team leader, so it's not like he brings nothing. However, with how weird your team looks and with how much help you still need, you probably aren't thrilled as a Shanghai fan to see Bebe as your final addition. Bebe has not been very good the last couple of years. He has struggled to keep up big time. He just isn't getting any better, and we know what his ceiling is. The Dragons face a really interesting challenge this year. Their roster is really strange, even with a second natural support player now in the group. I feel like they shouldn't be all that great, and yet I find myself curious to find out. It's going to be very fun to watch them. That's enough on Bebe though. There's really not much to say on him, obviously. So to wrap up today's video, I thought I'd quickly mention that the Overwatch League West Pro-Am starts tomorrow, March 23rd at 1 p.m. Pacific time. I plan to cover it in a separate video later today actually. So for now, here's a general summary. The Pro-Am will consist of all 13 Western Regional teams plus 7 Contenders teams. The teams to qualify are the Maryville Saints, Trick Room, Redbird Esports, Timeless, and Wisp from North America, then Twisted Minds and Team Peps from the Middle East and Europe respectively. They made it through a gauntlet of more than 200 teams to make it here, so big congrats to all of them. I'll give you my thoughts on the rosters and some general predictions in my other video later. For now, just know this will be a multi-day event. It's a round-robin group stage for 2 weeks, followed by a single elimination tournament in week 3 with all the group winners in it. Here's a quick snapshot of the groups if you haven't seen it yet. Finally, we get to see Contenders versus OWL though. This is something people have wanted and have been curious about for years. I'm not exactly confident that any of the Contenders teams will make serious noise, but it should be a lot of fun nonetheless. And with that said, that's going to do it for episode 7 of the Overwatch League Offseason News Recap 2023. Lots went down and I do apologize for not being here to cover it all right away. But even so, I hope that you enjoyed today's video. If you did, I would appreciate it if you could hit the like button and subscribe if you want to stay up to date with all things Overwatch League. And until the next video later today, I'll catch you guys later. Peace.